This is NDDC Today. This week on NDDC Today, House of Representative Ad Hoc Committee probing abandoned project of the NDDC in the Niger Delta summoned the executives of the commission to appear before it, as Ondo State government extols the NDDC for the support in the fight against Lassa fever that hit several communities in the state this year. This is NDDC Today. Welcome. We begin today with the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee probing abandoned project in the Niger Delta, which met with the acting managing director of the commission, Dr. Akwagaga, and some directors of the commission in Abuja last week. The committee is headed by Nicholas Osai, member representing Ndokwa Okwani Federal Constituency, Delta State. Addressing the committee, the acting managing director of the NDDC, Dr. Akwagaga, gave a summary of NDDC projects from 2008 to date, the number of projects awarded and those completed, and the funding profiles for such projects.
Numbers of projects awarded, 9,820. Number of projects completed, 4,288. Number of projects not yet started, 1,796. Number of ongoing projects, 2,645. Number of stalled projects, 342. Number of projects taken over by state governments and the others, 30. Number of cancelled, terminated projects, 49. Number of newly awarded projects, 660. Summary of funding, NDDC funding profile for 2008 to 2018. Approved budgets, 2.8 trillion from 2008. Actual receipts, 1.8 trillion. Outstanding funding based on approved annual budgets, 984 billion. Outstanding funding based on amounts payable according to NDDC Acts, 1.3 trillion.
Speaking further, Dr. Enya gave a brief definition of what is considered an abandoned project by the NDDC and enumerated how and why projects could be abandoned by NDDC contractors.
An abandoned project can be defined as a project which has neither been totally abandoned nor indefinitely delayed for various reasons. However, at NDDC, we classify our projects into two broad categories. The first category are projects abandoned due to contractors' fault. Projects could be abandoned due to contractors' fault in three different scenarios, namely, contractor mobilized and achieved 0% completion. Contractors mobilized, went to site, but made no progress to earn interim payment certificate, IPC. And fourthly, contractors mobilized and IPC, paid and failed to return to site 3 months after.
The NDDC acting managing director gave a further insight into why a good number of the projects embarked upon by the commission had been abandoned in the past. She enumerated such reasons to include increasing pressure on the NDDC from stakeholders in the Niger Delta to intervene urgently in a very broad range of areas, and the NDDC to cave in to such pressures. subtle and open threats to NDDC officials in recent past whenever intentions to bring erring contractors to book was declared.
Among the reasons for the indefinite delay in completion of such projects are the following: underfunding of NDDC budget over the years, especially by the federal government, detailed in Appendix 2B and C. Inclination of successive governing boards and executive management to pay for and fund new projects instead of settling existing debts for ongoing old projects which had earned IPCs. Community compensation and militancy issues. Banking crisis of 2006, which led to the revocation of the banking licenses for 14 banks. Our APGs are still tied down in these banks. Increasing pressure from stakeholders on NDC in recent years to intervene urgently in a very broad range of areas. Recent tendencies in NDDC to cave in to such pressures and initiate new projects to the detriment of existing ongoing projects. Subtle and open threats to NDDC top officials in recent past whenever intentions to terminate non-performing contractors' job was declared. Subtle and open threats to NDDC top officials in recent past whenever intentions to bring erring contractors to book was declared.
Dr. Akwagaga assured that the NDDC was determined to tackle the huge challenge of low rate of project completion in the Niger Delta and solicited for the support of the National Assembly in order to do this. She further solicited for the help of the committee in the recovery of all funds due to the Commission from the federal government, as well as all oil and gas companies operating in the Niger Delta.
We may humbly request for the backing of the Honorable Committee, the House of Representatives, and the National Assembly at large. In particular, we want to ask for the help in the recovery of all payments due from the federal government, as well as oil and gas companies operating in the Niger Delta region, in accordance with the NDC Act. We also appeal that you support us to ensure a drastic reduction in the introduction of new projects in the NDC budget.
While the NDDC officials were trying to explain to the House of Representatives ad hoc committee on the reasons for abandoned project in the Niger Delta, some states are commending the Commission for the little they've done, as understate government extols the NDDC for the support in the fight against Lassa fever that hit several communities in the state. The understate governor, Oluwarotimi Akeredolu SAN, has commended the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC for its timely intervention in ensuring adequate health care for the people of the Niger Delta. The understate governor said he was delighted that the NDDC was making efforts to ensure a healthier Niger Delta, noting that for a healthy Nigeria, there was need for a healthy Niger Delta.
If Niger Delta is not healthy, this country will not be healthy. So for healthier Nigeria, there needs to be healthier Niger Delta. So that I believe it is.
Speaking further, Governor Akeredolu thanked the NDDC for promptly responding to the needs of the state, especially in efforts to check the scourge of Lassa fever, which he said had been ravaging Ondo and Edo states seasonally. He lamented that the huge cost of managing the Lassa fever outbreak was weighing heavily on the resources of the state government, noting it was costing the state government about 1.6 million naira to treat one patient alone.
1.6 million, the cost of treating a patient. So it's something we face every time, and you cannot imagine our relief from this intervention.
The immediate past acting managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, Professor Nelson Bambaifa, officially handed over the mantle of leadership of the commission to the new acting chief executive officer of the NDDC, Dr. Akwagaga Lelegima Enya, at a brief ceremony in Abuja last week. Speaking during the event, Professor Bambaifa regretted that the handing over ceremony was taking place rather belatedly, as a result of circumstances beyond his control, but was glad that it was finally taking place. The NDDC former acting managing director thanked the management and staff of the commission for their cooperation during his 6-month tenure as chief executive of the NDDC, and enumerated some of the achievements recorded during his tenure. In her response, Dr. Akwagaga Enya thanked Professor Bambaifa for making out time to perform the ceremony and wished him success in his future endeavors.
I believe that with this is a working document for me to continue, because government is a continuous process. So this is a working document for me to continue. Thank you very much.
To achieve a seamless working relationship between the Ministry of the Niger Delta Affairs and the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC, the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and the Minister of State, Mr. Festus Keyamo, held an interactive session with NDDC management and staff during a working visit to the Commission's headquarters in Port Harcourt. The Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, urged both management and staff of the Commission to work in peace and give workable advice to the executive management team to achieve desired results that will help move the Niger Delta region to the next level.
So you have to realize that you work here and retire from here. So you must give the right advice. You must ensure that they do what is right. Because when they leave, you are the ones that will suffer. If what they did was not right, but if what they did was right, they are the ones that will take the credit.
Senator Akpabio observed that President Buhari thought it wise to appoint 2 sons of the Niger Delta to run the affairs of the Ministry of the Niger Delta Affairs and to partner with the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC to help fast-track the development of the region.
It is not a mere coincidence that Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief, President Muhammadu Buhari, in his wisdom, selected this time around a son of the Niger Delta and the Minister of State, another son of the Niger Delta, 2 Niger Deltans to work in the Ministry of Niger Delta, to collaborate with the NDDC to move the region forward.
The former 2-time governor of Akwa Ibom State advised the Niger Delta Development Commission to stop pretending to have the capacity to solve all the problems facing the people of the region, as he urged the Commission to stop politically motivated projects and prioritize key signature projects in the various focal states of the oil-producing region.
There is something else that we have been doing in the past. NDDC has been pretending as if you can solve all the problems of the region. Madam, you cannot. You don't have the funds. You don't have the resources to solve all the problems of this region. So don't pretend. I direct that the Commission must prioritize some signature projects in each state of the 9 states of the Niger Delta. Ensure regular funding, close monitoring and supervision, and also bring about prompt delivery so that we can have legacy projects in the Niger Delta.
While stating the similarities between his ministry and that of the NDDC, the minister maintained that there is the need for them to work with one accord to chart a new course for the people of the Niger Delta region. The Honorable Minister stated that crude oil, which is the mainstay of the Niger Delta region, is finite, as he announced plans to start a post-amnesty initiative, PAI, which will be domiciled in each of the 9 oil-producing states as industrial clusters. Senator Godswill Akpabio commended the Niger Delta Development Commission for completing the 24 billion naira Ogbeanembe Road, built in partnership with Shell Petroleum Development Company (SPDC), as he observed that the success story of the partnership would serve as a challenge to other local and international oil companies in the region.
The recently completed Nembe Road, Obia Nembe Road, at about 24.4 billion. And of course, the funding was 70% from Shell, I think 30% from NDDC, was commended. Such initiatives with Totafin and Elf, Monebolo and other oil companies operating in the region must be encouraged. In fact, that should serve as a challenge to other IOCs to come and partner with you in order to do major projects of that nature.
Earlier, the Acting Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Dr. Akwagaga Lelajima Enya, said that the NDDC is now working hard to redirecting the negative narratives about the Commission by making sure there is value for money spent by the NDDC on the execution of projects and provision of services to the people of the region. Dr. Enya said that the NDDC took seriously the challenge of the Minister to complete the Commission's headquarters buildings, as she informed the Minister that critical action towards advancing the project had been taken by the Commission with the contractor to ensure that the project was completed and delivered within an acceptable deadline. The Chief Executive Officer of the Niger Delta Development Commission informed the Minister that in less than 3 weeks, the NDDC had extended its frontiers in the desire to reduce poverty by half and transform Niger Delta rural communities.
However, as a Commission, we are committed to our mandate and executing same without fear or favor. Despite the odds, we are committed to quality service delivery. We count on your support, Your Excellency, to serve the Niger Delta region better, a service they demand and truly deserve.
Decades ago, the kingdom of Nembe, among other communities, buried in the bellies of the Bayelsa mangroves, were cut off from economic and social civilization for lack of motorable roads. In 2006, the NDDC, in partnership with Shell, came with a promise of hope. A 27-kilometer high-tech highway with 5 bridges cutting through rivers, swamps and mangrove forests of the Ogbea Upume Makalakala up to the city of Nembe town. It's now in use. The joy of the Nembes and its environs now knows no bound. Nembe economy and the industriousness of its people have taken a sudden leap.
Before we used to join boats, 2 days we are on the sea, going to Port Harcourt. Boat we cover side, people we lost. But now that motorable road don't come out, we are happy to travel to Port Harcourt, Yanagwa and everywhere.
Unlike in those days when before you have to travel, you must wake as early as 5 to go to the waterside to wait for boat, and disappointments that are inherent. But today, at the stamp of the hand, you can go and come. Today, as I speak to you, we are relaxed. You can travel at will. And then the joy of being integrated to the mainland can never be quantified.
The Ogbea Nembe Road, a major contemporary contribution of the NDDC to the development of the Niger Delta. The NDDC, focused and enabled, will do more.
In recent years, the urgency to deal with the socioeconomic conditions of people living with disabilities has resulted in various human capacity development programs to train, empower, and make them self-sufficient and able to make greater contributions towards the development of their communities and the nation at large. The Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC), obviously aware of the impact which the training and empowerment of the people living with disabilities will make on the general development of their communities, has continued to organize programs and activities aimed at developing this group of people. As a result, the NDDC has organized training and empowerment programs in agriculture for people with disabilities across the 9 Niger Delta states to help address the issue of unemployment, poverty, and generally give them a sense of belonging.
The lucky ones that we have been able to select through senatorial district, we are going to empower them, after training them, to empower them through fish processing, cassava processing, and other agricultural areas.
The project manager urged the participants to make good use of the opportunity given to them by the NDDC to be self-reliant. This program, tagged Empowering People with Disabilities in Agriculture, is geared towards affording the physically challenged opportunities to acquire requisite skills to help them compete equally and favorably in agricultural businesses with able-bodied people.
This program is addressing the SDGs. It's addressing the Sustainable Development Goal. But specifically, it's addressing Goal 1, reduce hunger and end poverty, Goal 1 and 2. But the 17 goals they are intertwined. Yes. And it's addressing Goal 10, reducing inequalities. Because if you are empowered, your gap between the rich and the poor we are bridging the gap.
Beneficiaries of this training and empowerment program in agriculture commended the NDDC for organizing such a program, noting that the gesture has given them a sense of belonging in the oil-producing region as they promise to put what they have learned into practice to add value to the society.
So many of us in our environment here, most of our major source of income is farming, and we have looked forward to doing mechanized farming, and this is a great opportunity for us to key into this program.
And I want to say a very big thank you to NDDC once more again, because of the little skills they have trained us how to do processed garri, cassava, juice and palm oil as the program is still going on. So they have had meaning to our lives for us to go out of the streets.
Before, I never knew there's a machine that helps to fry garri. Being a disabled person, you cannot go to the farm, crop, but now we know you can buy cassava and do it. As for me, I will do the fishing aspect. You can order for fish and dry it. I've learned so much about fishery.
The highlight of the training and empowerment program was the handover of the different agricultural processing equipment to the trainees to further assist them to practice what they had learned.
I want to encourage them that they should make use of this opportunity, because the government is doing their best to make sure that they earn a living. So they should not. They should make sure that this machine given to them, they are well taken care of, they are well maintained, so that at the end they will look back and say that if not for NDDC and government, they would have been somewhere else.
So we had the two big guns in the house this week, the Minister of the Niger Delta and his immediate junior, the Minister of State in the Niger Delta, Festus Kayamo, coming to the NDDC to ask questions and get answers. Well, we'll be following them and the NDDC in subsequent weeks on this program, as you always trust us will do, and also the development strides of the new acting managing director, Dr. Akwagaga Enya. We'll be here. We hope you will be there. Thank you for watching. See you same time next week.